You have to have something in there to cover your transportation, packaging,
And that's usually the 10%.
costs. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the insurance, is it our cost or what the customer's paying for?
What the customer's paying, the
Customers
value
pay.
of the
The
shipment.
value of the shipment. The commercial invoice
Value.
value.
Okay.
That's a real good point, Michelle. Make sure that you're only using one commercial invoice. Okay? Commercial invoice should match the price of anything that you do, whether it be insurance, duties and taxes, anything that you declare should be the same amount on the commercial invoice as any of those other documents. If you don't, your insurance could be null and void. You could be fined at customs. Okay?
Well, like if I file a claim with like FedEx, okay, they're gonna wanna pay my cost, not the cost that I am selling it to my customer for.
Exactly.
That's why I'm asking.
It should be. No, that's not accurate. Your commercial invoice is the price that you're selling
Yes.
to your customer.
Okay.
Okay? Isn't that the insurance amount?
Plus, then it always, when I fill out the form, and then it says plus a
Right.
certain percentage.
That's the amount that should be insured.
Okay.
That's what you're doing, right? Okay. Yeah. Do you guys run into that? No. Okay. Yep. And on the international shipments, that should be very easy,
Well, yeah, but I'm
because
saying, okay,
here's your commercial invoice. What?
with the FedEx example, I was talking more domestic.
Domestic is a different,
Right.
that's something
Right,
different.
That's the reason I was asking, because I know what FedEx is gonna do if I file a claim against them for something domestic versus getting the insurance
Right.
for an international shipment.
But for that, the only proof you have there is your invoices,
Correct.
okay? On an international shipment, you have your commercial invoice,
Yeah, and my sales contract.
right? Okay? On CIF, cost, insurance, and freight, your risk transfer, again, is different than your costs. Questions? Okay. Let's see if there's any notes. Only to be used for sea and inland water transport. That was one of the 4 that only pertain to water. Okay. CPT. Another term that is recommended for containerized freight. Let me find it. Seller, again, is responsible for goods commercial invoice, other documentations, the export licenses. No obligation to provide insurance. Deliver the goods to the first carrier at the named place of shipment, not place of destination. Okay? So here again, see this term, you get to name your place of destination. That's why it's good to use this term with containerized freight. Seller assumes all risk of loss or damage to the goods until they have been delivered to the first carrier at the place of shipment within the agreed upon stipulation in the sales contract. And you could see by just using the chart that as a seller, you're reducing your risk by still providing your customer with the transportation that they're looking for. As a buyer, I would be leery of this. As a seller, I'd be okay with it. But as a buyer, I would be a little bit leery. Does anybody use CPT? Buying or selling? No? Okay. Here again, as a buyer, I like to control I like to control my own shipping costs. Okay? Remember what we said earlier. You're going to pay for this no matter what. Your seller is paying it up front for you. They're putting their markup on it, then charging you in the price, and they're not taking any of the responsibility, any of the risk. That's a pretty good deal. But it's also a good deal if you're the seller. See that? I know I got you thinking now. Right? Questions about that? No insurance here. There's no obligation either way for insurance. As the buyer, I would hope that you're purchasing insurance because you're taking on all the risk. Okay? This will be the last term that we'll go over before we break for lunch. But one thing that I want you to see is that, and think about it during lunch, these different terms just change slightly. But they'll transfer the risk and put a lot more risk on a buyer or a seller with just a slight change. Do you see how that works? Okay? And that's why it's so important that even if you don't use any of these terms, at least you understand what's being played out there. And if you remember when I said this earlier this morning, no one term is good for universally.